Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The economic impact of the Agri-Center tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by John Butler, the new president of Agri-Center International. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So you have just taken the job. You've been on the board, I think you told me, for some time. But just talk about your goals, and we'll dig into what the Agri-Center does, where it's been, where it's going. But as the new president, what are your goals?
You bet. I'd first like to tell you a little bit about my background. Originally, I'm from a fifth-generation family farmer from Dyer County, and always had a passion for ag literacy and the things that kind of encompassed our goal and our mission statement there as somebody that's involved in the ag culture on a daily basis. When I kind of looked at this job at the very beginning, I loved the mission statement of trying to improve the quality of life for the citizens of Shelby County through economic development, ag research, ag production, and natural soils and conservation efforts. When you look at what the Agri-Center does on just a daily basis, it's really a hidden jewel for the community, and certainly from economic development.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I was getting ready to do this show, and we've written about the Agri-Center, and I've been there and all that, but I mean, you guys had a study done a year ago, $524 million impact. I mean, the number of jobs, the kind of range of what's going on there was really striking to me, actually.
Absolutely. When you look at not only what we do individually, but also collectively in relationship to all the tenants that are on our property.
Right.
You look at Bayer, Helena, Case IH. We're one of the 2 locations that Case does all their training program for their
Case being the tractor and heavy equipment and so on. Okay.
Absolutely. Case IH, which is currently owned by Fiat, but they're a major player in ag equipment manufacturing. And they have one of their 2 training facilities here in Memphis, Tennessee at Agri-Center.
Yeah.
So we're super happy to have that partnership. When you look at the overall economic development, as you said, it's $524 million annually. It's over 2,500 jobs directly and indirectly, and over $4.7 million of tax revenue that's generated off our events there.
Yeah, I'll bring Bill in a second, but you talk about Case, big corporate international company, Bayer, the pharmaceutical and fertilizer and so on and so forth kind of company, but also you guys do a lot of work with small scale things. You have one of the oldest, if not the oldest, farmers market in Shelby County, I think, and a lot of working. You have a Master Gardener program through UT. I mean, right? So talk some about the small scale, more individualized kind of things you do as well.
Sure. Well, you mentioned our farmers market. We're very proud to have one of the oldest continuous farmers market in West Tennessee. I don't know, Bill, if you've been out there or not, but it's really amazing. A lot of wide variety of fruits and vegetables. It's open 6 days a week, which is kind of unusual for farmers markets. A lot of times they just open on the weekends, but we're open 6 days a week, and you can find just hundreds of people come there for fresh fruits and also for seafood as well. So we're really glad to have them there as a partner.
Yeah, Bill.
And you talked about your family's farming experience, and I think that so often we talk about regionalism as a new concept in business. Actually, it's been around since there's been a Memphis, and probably before that in that regard. And a lot of people don't understand that, I think. I mean, Memphis has always been a cotton center.
Sure.
For instance, we were where the cotton came from, but it was grown all around us and in Shelby County as well.
You bet.
So talk a little bit about how this demonstrates kind of the reach of agriculture. The agriculture is a big business here, but it's also a family business in a lot of ways as well.
It is. If I could just for a minute, I'm sure most of your viewers understand how important the Delta and the Mid-South region is to the ag ecosystem, but we're really positioned amazingly in where some of the best soils in the nation are at. So from the Delta or the Mid-South region, you can almost grow anything here, from peanuts to rice to soybeans to cotton. And you can even look at a lot of some of the new crops that are coming out. It's really amazing the diversity of our ecosystem and the things we're able to do here. So when you look at having an ag research station here in the Delta, it's really a great compliment to the community. And then when you look at all the other players that are here from an ag investment standpoint, you have the Cargills, you have ADM, you have Bayer and Helena, obviously at our campus, you have Case IH, John Deere, you have several of the major companies that position not only in the region nationally, but also worldwide right here in the Mid-South area. So it's a natural kind of a melting pot from an ag standpoint.
So for a farmer, what is the technology like in this business these days? You have precision agriculture. You have a lot of technology, and you have a lot of changes over a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you sit down and talk like my father. He grew up on our family farm, and he actually picked cotton by hand. I'm the first generation of our family that didn't have to do a lot of that manual labor. So luckily for me, I got the chance to sit in some pretty nice tractors and kind of transition a little bit easier of a lifestyle, I guess. It's still long hours, and still very dedicated, but when you look at how technology has really revolutionized the ag industry over the last 20, 30 years, it's pretty amazing. We've got, pivots that basically bring water to our crop, also with, fertilizer and other nutrients. We've got GPS tracking that helps us as we spray our chemicals on our crops to make sure we do a very efficient job of not overlapping or anything and utilizing that.
And all that is available to small farmers too?
Absolutely. I'm actually a small farmer.
Right.
Our family business is not that large when you look at it. We're proud of what we've accomplished over the last several years, but still, we farm just a few thousand acres, and we're not, a lot of people say, well, you farm thousands of acres, you're a corporate farmer or whatever, but, if you talk to my father or when my grandfather was still alive, or, I turned the business over to my sons when I left to come up here to AgriCenter. So we're truly a family business, and we've been around the community for a long, long time, and we're certainly proud of our heritage.
How does all that when you talk about the technology and intersect with just as a consumer? So I'm not a farmer. I've been on farms, but I'm not a farmer, obviously. But all this organic food, the farm to table, the locally sourced food. How does that kind of what sounds like really sophisticated and very expensive technology, how does that jive with this idea of locally grown tomatoes and locally sourced cattle and so on and so forth?
Yeah, well, as a producer, I love that story. I really think that's, from an agricultural perspective, that's how we make the next transition. We've always preached ag literacy, the knowledge of knowing where your food and fiber comes from. But the concept of all this local movement, especially here in Memphis, this is a great food town. We're known for our barbecue and our blues, but my goodness, it's got such a great story past that. But when you look at trying to understand and really kind of bring those folks into what we call our ag picture, it's really a great, what I call the perfect storm, because all this interest is just coming up over the last couple of years, and people are very interested in where their food and fiber comes from. And that's why we have such a great interest in our farmers market. And you'll notice it's not just there at AgriCenter. There's farmers markets all over the community that are extremely successful.
And how does all that then play into, you do a whole lot of education programs with kids, high school kids. Talk about those education programs in, again, as you said, ag literacy, and what do you do with the kids? You
bet. Well, we have a great partnership with the University of Tennessee Extension, and we also work very closely with a lot of youth organizations like 4-H, for example. And we have our educator on staff basically deals with somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 kids every year. About 85 different schools from around the community come in. We actually have busing scholarships. Well, they're not out anything. So there's no excuse for a teacher or a principal or a superintendent not to have their kids at our campus this year at AgriCenter International.
And I'll go to Bill and say, but there's such this focus on childhood obesity and adult obesity. It's not a Memphis, it is a national problem. And it gets back to food and education on that. Is that part of the education programs with the kids, is nutrition and so on? It is.
Yes. When you look at some of the social challenges we have here, it's not just Mid-South region, but certainly we have to be aware, we more or less lead the nation in some of those issues that are extremely concerning and alarming. I think part of the local food movement is as we transition ourselves to to where that food and fiber comes from, we understand maybe the health associated with that as well. And hopefully as it works down from adults to youth, then it's just that natural transition happens. Well, yeah, sure, maybe I'll grab the banana instead of the bag of chips.
Yeah. Bill.
So how much of the research that's underway at AgriCenter deals with this whole question and even a controversy in some discussions about agriculture as an energy source versus a food source, particularly with corn?
You bet. Well, first off, all of our research, we have over 11,000 replicated plots this year dedicated just to ag research and how that involves not only technology, the plant physiology, and also as it relates to our environment. We're very in tune, those of us that are involved in ag issues, about how the general consumer views what we're doing. So we're certainly aware that there's a disconnect, and that disconnect has not happened over the last 5 years. That disconnect has come around as, for instance, more and more people have been disassociated from the farm. So most folks are 5 to 4 generations removed from actually farming the land themselves. So there's a different technology, a different phrasing. For instance, I can talk about some of the things I'm very used to, but maybe it's different for you and you've never heard of those words. The point is we have to have a relationship and a conversation with people that are based on the health of the products we're producing. And that we're not only producing it for you and your family, but producing it for our family as well. Now, when you look at the food versus fuel issue, especially as it involves corn and corn ethanol, it's a very centric argument that I think came about because people were trying to find how they can divide or create a difference within the ag community. And I've always related to this. It's very simple. It's an issue of national security. Would you rather have your fuel, grown and pumped out of the ground and a petroleum product and shipped over here, or would you rather have it raised by your own neighbors? And I love the fact that we're raising corn that's going into the ethanol industry, and also soybeans and biodiesel. I think those are great wins for us, especially from a standpoint of national security, from a standpoint of being more environmentally friendly to the environment. We have less greenhouse gases related to biofuels as opposed to petroleum-based products. So I think it's a huge win for us. Mm-hmm.
Are biofuels stabilizing? Because not too many years ago, we saw a cycle where when gas prices went up, biofuel enterprises did very well. When the prices dropped, they didn't do so well.
When you look at the cost of raw oil, I think it's about $42 a barrel, $43 a barrel right now. I mean, obviously that's created a crunch to the ethanol industry, but in all industries it's cyclical, and so you have to be able to kind of live with the downturns as well as the upturns. And when you look at the margins in the ethanol industry, they're making it. It's tough on them, but they're making it. When you look at how we relate from an industry perspective to the national, like the RFS, which is a standard the EPA issues to meet what they call the blend wall, we've been able to meet that as an industry, and we're certainly proud that from our standpoint we've been able to do it from an economic standpoint that's not been that beneficial the last 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a lot of us that drive cars and trucks, we love the fact that gas is cheaper than what it was 3 years ago. So that's certainly a benefit for us.
Yeah, you talk about energy and energy independence. You've got a solar farm, not a huge one, but a sizable solar farm out there that went in the last year or two. How long has it been?
I think it's about 4 or 5 years ago.
No, sorry, I have no sense of time. What's the importance of that, and what's it do? Is that electricity used on site? How is it used?
No, well, actually, that electricity is generated and hits the TVA grid.
Okay.
It's a whole different form of adaptation of the solar energy itself, trying to use it on site. So for us, it's better for us to hit the grid. We're right there about 100 yards from where we can hit the grid, and so it makes really a great sense for us to just put it at the grid. But it makes us energy neutral. And that's the point that we like to tell, is that, and I want to say something else. The man that's just retired, John Charles Wilson, basically put a lot of these programs I'm here talking about. So, I'm talking about him, but he actually did all the work to make it happen. So I want to make sure we acknowledge all the hard work and effort he's done.
Yeah. You talked about greenhouse gases. Do you guys study climate change and that, droughts around the country and so on? I mean, what the sort of change in climate and the impact that has on agriculture, does that play into your research, into what you're doing at the AgriCenter?
Well, a lot of our research is based on how the crops deal with moisture issues, drought tolerance. We're here in the southeast, so we have extreme conditions, not only the heat but also lack of moisture, especially during the July-August time frame. Last week we had heat indexes over 110 to 115, so that certainly has an effect not only on the crops but also the animals that are in farmers' care all over the Delta region. So yes, we look at that more. I think to the point we look at more as far as climate change. We look at some of the macro issues like whether it's La Nina or El Nino and how those affect not only the Mid-South but also the Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bill.
In working with farmers on yield, is the goal always the maximum yield, or is the goal a more strategic kind of yield?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I'm not sure if I know the answer to it, but I can tell you as a producer, it's all about producing volume, but it has to be done at a managed level, not only from an input standpoint, but from a resource, from an accountability standpoint. So for instance, it can't just be about yield. It has to be about how it relates to our local environment. For instance, one of the things I just went to yesterday was the Milan No-Till Day. It's the 29th year of the Milan No-Till Day, which basically revolutionized agricultural production here in the Mid-South region.
Explain that a little more.
Yeah, back in my father's day and grandfather's day, we were tilling the land up significantly, and so we had over 20 tons an acre erosion annually in some of our really silt loam soils here in West Tennessee. And what we found out,
by erosion, just to the layman,
yeah,
that just means is you're tilling it up, and then there's maybe a rain or there's wind or whatever, and so much of that good valuable soil goes away, and it's very inefficient.
Yeah, and it takes years and years and years, almost a generation, to build that soil back. So over the last 15, 20 years, we've identified that from a practical standpoint, if we basically change what we had thought was the way to do things and went to more no-till practices, so we don't till the soil up at all. We basically go in and we'll spray it, and then we just no-till it.
Is the industry, farmers of various sizes, are they open to all this change?
Absolutely.
Because there's a stereotype of maybe it's just my stereotype, of farmers being maybe resistant to change somehow, it being a kind of an old school industry that doesn't involve a lot of innovation. But you're describing an entirely different world.
We're on the cutting edge of innovation. Yeah. Farmers lead the innovation, I think, across the country. Most of us have either BS or advanced degrees in some type of science or animal husbandry degrees, and we're basically invoking our inner science nerds, so we're all about trying to figure out how to do it better, and it involves not only technology but also different practices, and no-till is one of those. Now, no-till has been around for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not necessarily a new revolution, but some of the things we're doing with it as far as cover crops is new. That's about a 5 to 7 year transition. We're using cover crops basically to control weeds.
What's a cover crop? And then go back to.
So we'll plant weeds in the late fall, early spring, like rye, clovers, like our legumes that help fix nitrogen, and all those things are done through the plants themselves, as opposed to us having to apply chemicals or other pesticides, and also man-made petroleum fertilizers.
Okay.
So it's done naturally.
Bill.
So what are the immediate goals on the horizon for AgriCenter?
You bet. That's a great question. Yeah. As we look at the local food movement, we've got a great interest in trying to move into more of organic research. We really think it's a great opportunity. And not that I'm here to say organic is the answer. I think organic is a component of what we do in agriculture. Obviously, I'm a traditional farmer, so I have GMO crops, I have traditional crops. I just think organic, especially here in the Mid-South region, is something that we want to kind of look at. We think as it works into our research farm, it would be really neat to have side-by-side comparisons of how organics actually compare to traditional crops. So we think it's really interesting from a research perspective.
So what is AgriCenter's relationship with Shelby Farms Park? There's a whole lot of change going on the other side of Walnut Grove, as well as your side.
First off, it's what they're doing over there at the Conservancy is really amazing. I don't know if you've been over there lately, but it looks just absolutely fantastic. And I'm excited to be a neighbor. When you look at the very origin of how we came about, we being AgriCenter International and Shelby Farms Park Conservancy, we both came from Shelby Farms. So when you look at that property as it existed back in the 60s and 70s, it basically was a very cutting edge, penal system that was self-sufficient. They had their own dairy, they had their own, ag production, their own a beef cattle herd, and they had a lot of soil practices that were very interesting as far as grass waterways and things like that. And actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but our very own county mayor, Mark Luttrell, his father was the superintendent of Shelby Farms at one time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a very unique connection between Shelby Farms and
AgriCenter was founded when?
83. So the
Okay.
story I tell, now you may want to talk, we still have some of those gentlemen laying around here, but they can tell the truth. The story I tell to myself that I think it sounds funny is that they were probably in a room smoking a few cigars, maybe taking a glass of bourbon, trying to figure out what do we do with 1,000 acres on the other side of the road. Hey, let's make it, we're here in the Delta, let's make it about agriculture. And so, that's about 83, 84. I think the groundbreaking was 85. And you kind of laugh about it, but those founding members of AgriCenter International really did us all a great favor. When you look at what we're trying to do from ag research and ag literacy, and I think the country and the nation and the region is kind of looking to us kind of lead as example.
And in AgriCenter, for people who don't know, and I was a little confused about this before prepping for the show, AgriCenter is a independent body, a 501c3, is that correct?
That's correct.
But the land is still owned by the county, is
That's
that correct?
correct.
Funding comes from where?
We're self-sufficient, actually.
Okay.
So we pay our own way.
Through the renting the space out to 20-something tenants?
Through the operations of our business. So we rent space out. We have an event center. We have the Showplace Arena that we also run equestrian events at.
There's an RV park? I didn't realize there was an RV park.
We've mentioned the farmers market. We haven't mentioned the RV park, but we have an RV park that is extremely successful business entity for us. We do a lot of ag research for hire. So that's an income stream for us as well.
Okay. And the agritourism is a term that you guys use on your website. You may even mention. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, it's how you kind of engage the local community with what's going on in agriculture. And so how we do it is through a tenant of ours that runs a corn maze. I consider agritourism as Jones Orchard has you pick strawberry. I consider that basically agritourism. The strawberries are amazing, don't get me wrong, but it's really interesting to watch people interact with something like that.
And that's the fundamental mission then? So,
absolutely.
So you've got to be self-sufficient, but you're not just there to make money. You are a nonprofit, right?
You bet. You bet.
Okay.
And so when you look at our mission statement, I think it's really important that we emphasize we're about ag education and trying to bridge that gap between people understanding where their food and fiber comes from.
Okay, just 3 minutes left.
Okay, and you've also got an audience for this with what is happening at the park, because on the western end of your side of Walnut Grove Road, a lot of people are crossing there at Farm Road, so they see what's going on there. A bike
Absolutely.
ride through the park, as well as to see what's going on at AgriCenter.
Yeah, and we've just got super happy to have a chance to try to do some extension and completion of our green line on our facility. Also, we have Wolf River right there on the river to the extreme south of us that borders us as well. So we have a lot of tourism on our facility. We're actually 1.4 million people to our campus annually. So we're like the third largest tourist attraction in Shelby County. So we're really happy with what's going on around us. We think that we're a really great jewel and certainly a compliment to Shelby County and to the region and to the greater Memphis area.
Some of the other tenants that are out there people are familiar with. Ducks Unlimited is obviously a big one, but there's things like the Raptors.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Well, anywhere in the Mid-South region, if there's a bird of prey that's injured or needs help, then they call the Raptor Center and they go get them, or TWRA takes it to them and they basically try to bring those birds back to health. So it's a really great story. I know they could use. I know they're a 501(c) and they could use additional funding as well. So if any of your audience members would love to participate to the Raptor Center, I'm sure they would appreciate it. We also have partnership with the Memphis Zoo in trying to raise the bamboo for their pandas, and so that's a great story as well.
As somebody who lives in Midtown with bamboo in my backyard, they don't want mine, but they do want yours. And you all were partner in the Ag Launch Accelerator.
You bet.
There's a huge. We had Leslie Smith and some other people from Epicenter, the startup community on, and it's growing and growing. BioWorks is involved. But talk about your role and what it gets back to this innovation and technology and the business and so on. What the Ag Launch Accelerator involved.
Well, first off, I could just say, Memphis BioWorks, Steve Bears, Pete Nelson, what they're doing there is absolutely incredible. When we're just a partner with them on a lot of their programs, and we're just trying to help them as much as we can. When you look at the future of what AgriCenter holds for the region, we think it's an incubator. It's an opportunity to have startup businesses there, an R&D campus, maybe, probably as we look into the future.
At AgriCenter.
Absolutely, at AgriCenter. We think we have the chance, the way we're positioned in the Delta here in the Mid-South region, specifically focused on ag generation, ag business. We think we have the chance to kind of be that nucleus of where does it start at? It starts at AgriCenter here in the Mid-South region in Memphis.
Right. How many people, I'm putting you on the spot, which is a couple seconds left. How many people are employed in the Mid-South in agribusiness? Do you have any sense of that?
I don't know in the Mid-South. I can tell you, state of Tennessee, the ag economy is about $63 billion in the state of Tennessee.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that is all the time we have.
Well,
Thanks for
thank you
being
very
here. It was
much.
great to meet you.
Had a great time.
Good. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.